Well, I'll tell you what, I just am fortunate enough to have met somebody this last couple of months that has kind of changed the trajectory of my own life. Tammy Lee Anderson, it just has to be one of those people that if you haven't met her and you don't realize it, you're missing a part of your life. I'm sorry, Tammy, I don't want to embarrass you on this interview, but it was a pleasure being down there in Clovis a couple of weeks ago. We did a workshop at your beautiful martial arts studio there, and I want to thank you for hosting that.
You're welcome.
And I found when I started looking at your life story, I mean, you're one of these people that what I lack in humility, you have. Nobody's ever accused me of being humble. But there's a secret little quiet energy that kind of flows through you. And when somebody comes to your dojo, I believe that's the correct word, your dojo, your studios there, it is evident. We did a workshop there that was so elevated and uplifted with the surrounding work that you've done prior to me getting there. You've already fertilized the environment with love and energy and healing. So I'm going to just mention a couple things about you that impressed me, and then we're going to get into depth on that because I want you to give a little detail on things as we go, because people are going to find not only are you into healing, and not only are you a fifth degree black belt and you're into martial arts, but you're also into helping people spiritually, mentally, and physically. And you're doing that from various skills learned and intuitively. I'm assuming some of these just were there and developed on their own. But you've had 3 near-death experiences. We're going to touch on that. And then in your youth, you kind of wandered the globe, as the ultimate seeker, the searcher, looking for the spiritual, looking for that man on the mountaintop experience, looking for that guru, that teacher. And so we'll touch on that. And then just my own personal satisfaction, I'll ask you some questions that I'm just curious about. So we're just going to kind of roll with this. And I think I'm going to let you do most of the talking. And if you've been around me long enough, Tammy, yeah, that's a good idea because I can't get a word in, right? So, all right. So let's start off with the basics. All right. So the basics are you're born and you start your life off having 2 near-death experiences before you're like 1 or 2 years old. What was that about? What happened? And how did that change your trajectory in your life?
It actually set my life in a direction. It was quite interesting. But the first one, actually, my mother was in labor for over 38 hours. Poor mom. She suffered quite a lot. And they say that I was born, stillborn, so I wasn't. They said, they apologized, said sorry, she didn't make it, or it didn't make it. They didn't even say it was a girl or a boy. And somehow they got it going. They took me into another room and came back and said, we got her going. So I was in the hospital in an incubator because I was born 2.5, I believe 2.5 months early. So it's quite small. I weighed like 3 pounds something, I believe. And they wanted me to get up to 5 pounds before I could go home. So I was in the hospital for I believe about 6 weeks before they got to see me. They would come, my parents would come on the weekend and look through the glass, and I was in the little bubble in the back of the room. And I have memories of this. And I told my mom when I was 17, because I remembered details of mostly emotion. I remember my mother's emotion. I remember my grandparents' emotions. And I don't know if I want to go into all that, but there was quite a bit of emotion on many different levels during that time. And I was able to describe to my mother when I was 17 all the details of my conception and my birth. And she had never told me, and she broke down in tears when I told her what I knew. And so anyways, that there's quite a bit to that, but I don't want to go into detail with that. I'll go into the second one. The second one is quite different. I was about 6 months old, and what happened there was I needed to have a surgery because the fontanelles had closed in the head. So the fontanelles were the soft spots, that babies have. We have several of them in the head. Well, my head couldn't grow. They were closed. I guess because of the pressure, I was in the canal so long that things just closed and the head couldn't grow. So I would have died or been severely retarded if my mom hadn't had the courage, or my mom and dad hadn't had the courage to do this surgery. So it was very brave on their part. And so what I do remember this surgery, and it was this near-death experience was my heart stopped the first time they attempted it, and that was a result of the anesthesia. So I went into I just went into the light, and I remember the light and being very peaceful then. They had to wait to do the surgery a second time, or a few months later. But on that one, I had a big hole in my heart. My mom said, what did they do to you? And I came back after surgery, and there was a big hole in my heart from them having it. I imagine it was from adrenaline. I don't know what they actually did. But I remember the light. I remember the peace. But I also remember when I came back into my body being extremely afraid, cold, and it was a lot of different emotions, from going from extreme peace to extreme fear, coming back into the body. And I just remember being very cold, shaking. And so these from a young age, from very young, I remember one of the things that attracted me was sound. I was very sensitive to sound, to my dad has a very loud voice, so the sound of the voice was very. I was sensitive to the loudness of it, and just all the things around me. So I was very attracted to music, although I never played any music. I listened to music. I listened to classical music as a kid. My parents never listened to classical music, but they had bought me a stereo, and I would listen to classical, Mozart, Beethoven, and I would actually just float between the spaces of the sound. So and I would just kind of hang out there for hours, and I was quite odd in that way. And my parents were like, "What is she doing in there for hours?" And but I was sensitive to sounds. I was sensitive to light. And just I was more of I was very athletic, but I was also contemplative all my life since I was born. I was drawn to spirit world and the spirit connection all my life. When I was 17, I investigated. We weren't brought up in a religious family, so I didn't have that background, but I was interested in the spirituality and religions, and I wanted to study comparative religious studies. But I got into a university in LA, which was a Catholic university, Loyola Marymount, and I studied. My undergraduate degree was in philosophy and theology, but my interest was in comparative religious studies, and I lived with many different religious communities. I worked on Skid Row, working with the homeless, with the Dominicans, with the Franciscans. I did peace and justice work and worked with counseling for people living on the streets. I worked South Dakota on an Indian reservation. I was at, let me see, there's so many, I go back and forth in time because I don't have a really good timeline, but.
So this is in your early adulthood, like this was.
Yeah, that was early. Yeah, I just jumped from being a baby to early adulthood. Yeah, but all those years, I was in sports, competitive sports. I was on a team that made the national championship 5 times. I think I was with them 5 times. Made the North American championships, the Pan Am Games. And I was heading for, I had dreams of making the Olympic team. But in the 1980, when the US and Soviet Union were battling each other, those dreams kind of went down the tubes. And so I joined the Air Force because I didn't know what else to do with myself. And I was quite patriotic at the time. And anyways, so that lasted not so long because I wanted to go into medical, and that's what they had promised. So after that, I went to work on a reservation in South Dakota. And then between that time, I went to England, and I was working with the Ecumenical Conference Center with people who were doing conferences in Suffolk, UK. And I got to meet a lot of people, and there was this wonderful library in this place. It was a Tudor mansion. They had a church there, and I was in charge of taking care of the church. And it was just the life that I really loved, the peace of this place and the community. I was always, for some reason, attracted to religious life, religious community. And so I think that's why I went to so many different communities and tried it out, actually. But the problem is poverty and chastity are easy for me, but obedience has not been. I've been quite independent, and so it's not. I've walked my own walk because I hear the guidance of God for my life. And when I was 7, I remember it was quite an impact on me. I remember being on the side of my house and leaning against the wall, and I was aware that I could not even walk across the grass without causing some kind of damage. And I was aware deeply that that I wanted to be able to be in this world and cause as little damage and as much love as I could. And at the time, my neighbors had lost their son. He was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I remember watching people stream into his house, and the parents were grieving. And I wondered what it would be like to lose somebody I loved. And until I was 23, I didn't even, actually, I lost my grandfather before that, so I knew. But I didn't know what it was. You can't imagine the loss until it happens. It's not something in our imagination, it's in something in our being that's we've lost a part, feel like we've lost a part of us. And so my brother, that's another story, but my brother passed when he was 18, and I can go into that if you want. And that's quite significant in my journey as well. So you can see that I'm all over the place here. When I was in the UK, there was a library, and I was reading Thomas Merton's 7-Story Mountain, which influenced me quite a lot, his journey. And so he talked about a monastery in New Mexico that was quite interesting in his book, and he didn't like it because it was so remote. And it's probably, I think it's one of the most remote monasteries in the United States, maybe even the world. It's way out in the middle of the desert in New Mexico. And I started writing the brothers, and I said, I want to come to this place. I'm very interested in spending some time here. And they said, well, guests come for 2 or 3 days, and then we can welcome you. And I said, no, I want to come for a couple of months at least, because it takes me that much time to wind down. And they were not open to this at all. It's like, this is a male community. And anyways, I persisted until they allowed me to come. And I was there for 3 months the first time. Then I left and went and finished my degree in theology. And then I came back for almost a year. I was out there in Hermitage. And the practice was, it was silence. The prayer was, I think, 7 times a day. We were praying a Gregorian chant. So it was quite traditional. And it was an amazing time where the prayer becomes part of your everyday moment, through your work, because there's work in between the prayer sessions, there's meals, but the prayer would be in your being, in your mind, in your presence, through your work, through your eating, through your walking, through your praying. You know, it was an amazing, and I would have loved to stay, you know, the rest of my life in that monastic life, but I had school loans to pay back. And so the interesting thing is that was an all-male community, and afterwards they started accepting women, so it became a two, and now I think they've moved back, but they have a women's community also near there. So it gave a bit of balance, I think, to have the feminine and the masculine there. So what else? There's so much.
Did you go to Europe as well? I mean, did you go back to Europe after that? To the
I traveled around from the UK. When I was there a year. So I traveled during that time. I went to Rome, and I got to meet Mother Teresa and the Pope at the time. Mother Teresa's very short, and her presence was piercing, I have to say. It was like she was speaking directly to you with her eyes. And I almost went to India, but I just couldn't imagine. I was traumatized by the poverty in Mexico when I was 12, that I didn't want to see something that I couldn't have any hope of helping. It was, when I was 12, I saw kids and children living in cardboard boxes that were bitten up by rat bites, you know, and it was just traumatizing to see such a thing. And so going into India wasn't something that I wanted to see, the poverty what Mother Teresa was working with. But so I went in a different way. But from Rome, I went. It was the first day of the International Youth Day that the Pope set up, and I was there with 20,000 young people from around the world, talking about what it would look like to have a world with an intention of peace and love for each other rather than war. And they had translators, so it was an amazing experience. I went to Taizé, which I don't know if you know about Taizé, but Taizé is in France, and it was started by a gentleman called Brother Roger, and he was a Protestant minister, but he formed an ecumenical community of men, and they were from all different religions. And the prayer was just phenomenal there, because it was in a building that was torn down during the war. It was shot down, and the Germans built this ugly old building out of cement, but it was transformed by the energy that people would bring there. I mean, there was candles inside, and just the prayer would be going on all night long, and young people from all the world, I mean, thousands of young people gravitated towards Taizé and just did these chants in different languages, one-liners that you can tune into, and it was just incredible. And Brother Roger knew that many young people wanted to stay at this place, and because it was such a connection there of love. And but his message was, go home and bring it into your communities. And so I did. I when I came to this place here in Clovis, California, I never intended to have a property. I was living out of suitcase most of my life, and a wanderer and a traveler. And there was a gentleman painting inside the house one day, and I walked by and I said, "How much is this house for rent? You know, I want to rent here for a little while." And he said, "You know what? You should buy this house." This came from a gentleman, you know, handyman that was just painting, and it hit me. And I thought no, and then I thought yes. For some reason, it was very. And when I put my intention on something, I've realized through many experiences that when I focus, that it's very easy to create. The potential of our creative power is magnificent, and when I put my intention on something, it's just it happens. And so
having been at your place there, it's right on the edge of the historic district, the old town there. That's prime real estate. You couldn't buy today. I'm looking at it thinking, I mean, I don't. Talk about that, because you told me how that was financed and everything. That's just amazing. Because
Yeah, I didn't have, any money at the time. And the lady that I started talking to said, I said, I don't know why, but I'm attracted to ask you about buying this place. And but I don't have, I don't have credit at all. And she said, well, I like you and I think you should have this place. She owned the whole block. She's an eccentric Italian lady. And she said, I'm going to finance it for you. So you pay me the payments. And so that's how this happened. And I felt like it was a gift for me, but for many people. And so I put the intention. I did sound. I went around the property with the drum and did some drumming. And I asked the angels come to each corner of this property, and I put a lot of intention in creating a beautiful space that when people walked into this place, that they would just take a breath and relax, because it's very much like when you're in Japan and you walk down a busy street and you turn into a garden, and it's like magical. And that's kind of that's what I've created here with a lot of love. And over the years, we've had many seminars of healing and energy work. And my work and my whole life has been about healing. I met a priest when I was 17 who was a healer, and he kind of took me under his wing. We became friends, and I would help him with the masses, the healing masses, and I saw miracles happen. I never once saw healing not happen. It might have happened in a different way that people intended, but the healing always happened. And I took my mom there and my sister there. I said, just feel this. And it was quite remarkable. I remember the first time I had the experience. I've had many precognitive experiences, intuitions all my life. But one day the priest that I was with, he was going into a counseling session with somebody. He didn't, it's all private, so he wasn't going to tell me anything. But I was sitting there, waiting for him. The session was going to be probably about 45-minute session, and he was going to do a healing for someone. That's all I knew. So I connected. I just sat there and I said, well, I'll just connect and add my intention of healing for whoever this is. And at the time, I saw a little girl with her father, and this little girl, I say, was about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, and I saw her with light around her. And I knew that she would be passing soon. She was going into the light. And so I just prayed for her, and I prayed for her family, that this would be tolerable in some level, that there would be some peace in this transition. Anyways, I knew her name even, and I understood her name to be Cassie. And I told my sister afterwards, I said, look at the newspaper the next few days, because this child's going to leave and it's going to be in the newspaper. And her name is Cassie. Well, sure enough, a few days later, this young child passed, and her name was Cassie, short for Catherine. And she passed. And it wasn't my place to do anything except to be there. I didn't contact anybody. My sister's the only one that knew about this. But anyways, so there's many instances in my life where I've been connected with my brother, as far as I had many experiences before he passed of him. Every time I'd see his back and he'd be walking away, I'd get this feeling like somebody was punching me in the stomach. And I felt like he was not coming back. And I kept telling my mom, I feel like he's going away and he's not coming back. And she got nervous, because I've had many experiences growing up, and she took it quite seriously, and she's trying to get him to get rid of his motorcycle. I said, I don't know how it's going to happen. Anyways, the day he passed, he he was walking out to get on his motorcycle, and he didn't have his helmet. And I said, where's your helmet? And he looked at me and goes, oh, okay, I'll go get it. So he walked back in the house, he got his helmet, put his visor up, and he looked at me, he goes, goodbye, I love you. And I just felt like somebody just clocked me in the stomach. I couldn't say nothing to him. I just was in a daze. I just couldn't function, and I just watched him drive off. And I got in the car with my mom and dad, and we drove down the street, and we stopped to talk to my brother, and he was getting in the car with his best friend, his best friend was 16 years old. My brother was 18. And his dad had given him a Porsche for his 16th birthday. And when kids like to go fast, and so they went driving into hills. But anyways, I just sat there, and I remember looking through the little window, looking out at my brother, and just knowing that would be the last time I would see him, at least in this form. And so anyways, probably about 6 hours later, I was at my parents' house, and the phone rang, and I just looked at my mom. I said, Ron's dead. And you don't say that before people know, because they just went into a panic, and it just came out of me. Anyways, yeah, they were driving through the hills between Santa Paula and Ojai, and they went around a curve, and he couldn't hold the car, and it hit a tree and killed him instantly. And the interesting thing about this was, about 2 weeks before, I had been, ever since I can remember, I've done these adventures, I call them, or just experiences. I just go naturally. Nobody's taught me to do this, but I was drawn to the mountains, and so I would go into the mountains and pray. And I was in the mountains, and I had an experience, and I was 23. This was I call it a near-death experience because I've never known what else to call it. But I went into the light. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't eating, and I was in the mountains for about a week. And it was very hot, and I just went out of my body. And I was in the light, and I was going, there was all these other beings going towards the light. And all of a sudden I noticed the back of someone, and it was my grandfather. And I said, Papa. And he turned around, and it was just like a phenomenal experience. I mean, it's hard to express these experiences because the words don't even come close. And I was just so filled with his love, and I said, so good to see you. And I said, okay, so tell me the real deal here. All these stories about Jesus, I want the real story about what he's like. And all of a sudden, as I looked into his eyes, I was faced with the face of Jesus. And I saw love that I can't explain how amazing and beautiful. The words just come too short. But I was just overwhelmed by love. And I started going into that love and into the light. And I got kind of pulled to the side because I had no intention of coming back. And I got kind of pulled to the side by this being, and I can't say female, male, because it doesn't compute how to put that. But I'll say female just so, because I don't have any better words. Because the energy of this person was soft and kind and gentle. And I was asking questions 100 miles an hour, all the questions I ever had about, like, well, why do babies come here and, they die, or they suffer, or they get beat, or, why do, I was asking about all the suffering in the world that I didn't understand. And every time I asked a question, I got the answer, but it was like an answer that filled my whole being, and it was immediate. And then I realized that I was asking questions with my words, but all of a sudden I realized all I had to do is think it, the question, and then I understood. It was immediate. And then all of a sudden what happened was just these darts of light of different colors started coming into my being, and every piece of light, and sorry for I can't explain it any better way, every piece of light was understanding, it was knowing, it was ecstasy on top of ecstasy. It was just, and I understood so many things that I didn't, and everything made sense. The death of my brother that I would see in a few weeks, it all made sense. Now I'm back in the physical form, and so much I've forgotten, but so much I remember as well. And so I did have a chance to share this with my brother before he passed, and it was quite a beautiful experience. And he came back to me. He actually showed, he came after he passed, he showed up on my porch, front door. He was at the front door in physical form. And as open as I am to all this, it scared me. You know, I was like, I can't handle this. I can't handle this. You know, and so he went away. But he came back that night in a dream where I was more relaxed, and it was more than a dream. And he came back to me and he was laughing and he was happy, and he just said, well, you're right about one thing. Like everything else, you're not even close. You can't even imagine. And and I said, well, what am I right about? And he goes, there's more to it than what appears to be. And so every time I think I know something, I just go back into, yeah, we can't even imagine the vastness of all of it. We can't fit it into this little piece of mind that we animate here in a physical form. So so how I got into my practice, I'm moving quickly. My practice has been healing all my life. So when I was doing work with the Franciscan community in Milwaukee, and I was doing real hardcore work with counseling. I was working with battered women, helping run a shelter for battered women, and I saw things that I don't, you don't even want to think about anymore. And I was working with people on the street, heavy duty alcoholics, and having to say, you can't come in tonight because you're drunk, and to know that they could die that night. And it was very taxing on me emotionally to work with the pain that I was witnessing every day. And the recovery rate was quite small, even though the setup was quite good at the place that I was working at, and the resources were good. The pain was just. Anyways, I went on a retreat, and I got some body work for the first time from somebody who's actually a nun. And I thought, oh, that was amazing. I want to be able to do that for people. So I went and started training in body work. And I learned about Dr. Rolf. I started, I didn't go into Rolfing right away. I was working with sports therapy with athletes and stuff, sports injuries. And one of the things my teacher told me that really hit me in a big way was to have the audacity to put your hands on another human being. It's like touching into a universe unique in all the world to itself. Each person is like a unique universe, and to have the to put your hands in this and mess with it, and you have to have a big humility. And you also need a background in spirituality. You need a background in psychology, and because the gamut, anatomy, physiology, because there's so much to what makes up a person, generational, forward and back. And so I got degrees. I got undergraduate degrees in theology and philosophy. I did a master's degrees in kinesiology, exercise physiology. So I did gross anatomy. So I was, dissecting, the brachial plexus in the neck. I know one semester I I got to break down the brachial plexus and the magnificence of how we're made. I mean, it was quite amazing. So then I continued at the same time. I got a master's degree in counseling, marriage and family therapy. And my interest there was to kind of kind of have the avenue and the resource. I was doing Rolfing at the time, developed by Dr. Ida Rolf. And that is a structural body work. And basically, Dr. Rolf was a mystic. And I was attracted to this, of how to help people evolve in their physical form to the highest potential by the avenue of integrating structure and alignment. If I had anything, and I'm jumping around because there's so many things that have happened in my life. I started Aikido when I was in junior college, which was I was 18 at the time, or 17 or 18. So I've been doing Aikido all these years, martial arts, which Aikido means the way of harmony. And I taught at the university for 10 years, self-defense, martial arts, and Aikido. And the reason why I just told you about that is because if I had one word to say about all of this, the integration of the body and the mind, the martial arts, and the spirituality, I would say if there was one word, I would say it's relationship. Everything's related to everything else. And if we just start with our own bodies, modern allopathic medicine wants to break us into pieces, and you go to this specialist to look at this liver, and you go to this specialist to look at the heart, and nobody's talking to each other. But the body is actually an integrated whole, and actually it's integrated with the earth, and integrated, if we just looked at the connections and the relationship, it's all connected. And as we develop ourselves, we develop the whole web. And so it's very true that, as Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. And so as you develop yourself, and so anyways, this whole walk has for me has been about the integration of relationship, the integration of love, and the development of, one of the reasons why I was attracted to your work, Reverend Bill, was your humility, and also the I would say empowering people to do it for themselves. Empowerment is very important to me. I don't want to be anybody's guru. And I tell people, it's just like, I have people that have tried in the past. And I say, when put people up on a pedestal, it reminds me of, the birds shitting on a statue in a park, and eventually these statues fall. So don't put me there. I'm just like everyone else. We're all just on a similar walk, not the same, but we're on similar walks, and we're all aspects of the divine light. And so I don't, and that's why I've never attempted to do a public, this is my first public video, because I don't want to be somebody out there, saying this is me and I'm doing this. I'm just one of many people that are helping the web and the relationship grow brighter and shine and polish a little bit. And that comes from my own personal walk. I can only take people as far as I've been willing to go myself. And I've worked my butt off on my own spirituality, but my own psychology and the generational patterns that I walk, that I carry with me, to integrate into an alignment with a higher design, with a more loving design, direction. And so I don't know, here I am. Do you have any questions? Because I'm talking a lot here.
Here's what I think me and you kind of related, because you listen to me talk about energy, and like, you're one of these people I talk to about it. It's like, yeah, like that's, You're breathing, right? And then I went into your healing room that you have there. Very unique, and you're using frequencies of sound and energy. Can you talk about how you got into that aspect of healing? I mean, you really put it together. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it's I realized a long time ago, I don't know when, but I realized that this is all about frequency. And I think I realized as a child listening to music, that there's certain frequencies take you into different states of mind and states of being. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about chanting and Gregorian chant and chants of the Buddhist monks. It raises you to a level of contact, and I think that's why a lot of the churches are built the way they are, is because the sound, the acoustics lead you into a higher state of being. And so mainly I use the sound in my own development, but I do have a table that I run sound and frequencies through. I attended the Monroe Institute several times. I've been there, and they work with binaural beat, and I was very interested in how they use that for higher states of consciousness and out-of-body experiences. I do think, though, that I've had out-of-body experiences, and I've described several here, but I do think we're here to have a physical experience. And so many people are, including myself, sometimes want to be out of this physical form because it can be quite trying and painful. And but I think we're here to be in this form, to bring love in all its manifestation into a form, into form, and into this. Can we even love this? As challenging as it can be, sometimes can we even love this? So frequency, I do have a pool that I put sound speakers in. So I run frequency through sound, through water. I've experimented through different mediums, through steel, through wood, through glass, and just experimenting on my own to see what it felt like, and what I felt like emotionally, and what levels I could get. I think it's quite possible. I think Bob Monroe understood that there were certain frequencies that will lead us to higher states of consciousness and out-of-body experiences. And so that's been a journey of mine. So my primary work right now in healing, the Rolfing, the structural integration, I did for almost 27 years, almost 30 years. I did that, and all this is after COVID. Everything kind of coalesced into a direction of using my, I just say intuitive self,
Yeah.
through mediumship. And so I was influenced by Suzanne Giesman, who was commander in the Navy. She was assistant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a lady of quite high integrity, who her story, documentary, is online. I think you've actually met Suzanne at probably one of your conferences, but
Yeah.
I was quite moved by her integrity, and she's a medium, and her story drew my interest. And so I went to Arthur Findlay College in UK, and I studied mediumship, and it kind of brought everything together. And I believe that this is, for the rest of my short time here on Earth, that right now what I'm doing as a full-time practice is integrating the healing work that I've done all my life to doing distance healing as well as mediumship, especially for families who've lost children, connecting them. And really the message is that the veil is quite thin, they're still with us. And as we continue to develop ourselves, our vision will get clearer, and all of us can do this. People soon will not be going to mediums. They'll be doing it, they'll be communicating themselves and trusting that it's real. And so, but right now there still are mediums that are working very hard. I work through a platform called Very Soul that's quite high standards. And I've been training and working with them for quite, well, since the platform before it went online. So helping that develop. So they've been developing and I've been developing. And so the walk continues. I continue to grow deeper in love with spirit, and with the passion of, manifesting love in this form. So there we are.
Well, I'll tell you what, you haven't disappointed me. Since I've met, there's a kinship of the energy.
Yes, very much so.
And I there's certain things that you showed me down there that you won't let me talk about, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's quite private. Yeah,
Just
I'm actually quite a private and recluse, and so this is quite.
Just for the audience to know that she's involved in a lot of unique things and beautiful supernatural things about energy and raising vibrations. So the people that come to you in need, whether you're using your mediumship to contact their children or deceased, or whether you're physically healing, working with somebody through sounds and frequencies, or just through your own inner sounds and frequencies, you're kind of at that stage of your life where I think you're kind of being forced into a new direction of exploration since you've had, you can't do your martial arts anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sensing that your other senses, it's like if you lose your vision, you lose your hearing, the other senses pick up. I think the fact that you're not doing your martial arts stuff and not using the body as much as you used to, I see you expanding your other senses to new areas and all involved with frequencies. So when I was allowed to host my workshop there, and basically my workshop's just about, instead of bringing frequencies, artificially, through sounds and music and all this other stuff. Basically, I want to empower people with creating their own frequency,
Yes.
tuning for it themselves, and I'm hoping, and I got the feeling that you're going to incorporate this as well into your stuff, because whatever I'm doing, people can improve and change. I mean, it's like, hey, you're throwing something out there, this works, and then you had to add your own personality, your own abilities, your own talents to it, and I'm assuming that this is going to morph into something very unique for you. And for the people that are living down there in Clovis or Fresno area or Southern California, uh, you're offering great new hopes, and I'm hoping that people discover you. And we will post your contact information when this video goes on YouTube.
Thank you.
Maybe next year we'll do a healing retreat together someplace and introduce different techniques and things. But I want to thank you, Tammy. I value my new friendship with you, although it feels old. I think when we got together, there was no like, how are you? It was just like, yeah, here you are. I mean, it was like, like
very familiar. Yeah.
Two old warriors come back to battlefield. Yeah, here we are. Okay. Part 2, part 3, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the sound, let me just say one thing more about the sound. It doesn't have to be complicated. The sound of the voice is healing, when you speak to someone with love, and the sound is transmitted into their field. And so becoming conscious of how we use the sound of our voice. Many people comment about that with me, but I mean, I play with things like the didgeridoo. You see a didgeridoo behind me and stuff like that, and I'm attracted. But the simple sound of the voice has a big impact on people we talk to every day, and how we say things. It's it's not often it's not even what you say, it's how you say it. And
it's the word.
Yeah, it's the word made manifest. Yes.
You go, but everything's about frequency, and both of us know that the greatest frequency of all is love.
Yes.
Transcends everything. What's interesting is the time you spent at these monastic retreats were using the power of old hymns and
Yeah.
old chants and Gregorian music, which the Catholic Church and the churches actually absorbed from India,
Yes.
from the Hindu traditions,
Yeah.
Nath traditions, all these higher frequencies of chants. It's all about sound.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they discovered that in the Catholic Church, and then somehow that information on why they were doing these chants got lost someplace along the line. But I think that's been rediscovered. But
Yeah.
there's about listening to Gregorian chants. I don't care who you are. It's so soothing. It puts you in a meditative state just to listen to. You don't have to know what the words mean. Words, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. It's a sound.
To me, it sends you home. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Tammy. We'll be
Thank
talking.
you. Thank you very much.
Blessings and peace to you. And for the people out there, if you're looking for relief physically, mentally, spiritually, you have things going on in your life, you need some real counseling and stuff, and you're available, check out our website. There's ways to contact you. Don't have to be living down that area. So thank you, Tammy. God bless those that listened in, and blessings
Thank
and
you.
peace. Again, as a stop.